It started with a simple email. Olivia sat in her dimly lit apartment, her laptop open on the coffee table, the blue glow of the screen the only source of light. She had always been drawn to the unexplained, spending her free time researching haunted locations and paranormal phenomena. That evening, as she scrolled through her inbox, a new message caught her eye. The subject line read, "Dare to explore the unknown?" Curious, she clicked on the email. It was from an anonymous sender and detailed the history of an abandoned school called Blackwood Academy, located deep within Blackwood Forest. The email claimed that the school was notoriously haunted, with numerous sightings of ghostly children and mysterious occurrences reported over the years. Attached to the email was an old map of the forest and a set of cryptic clues promising to guide anyone brave enough to explore the school. Olivia's heart raced with excitement. She knew exactly who to share this with. Grabbing her phone, she quickly texted her friends, Matt, Sarah, and Jason. They had been inseparable since college, bonded by their shared love of adventure and the paranormal. "Guys, you won't believe this. Check your emails. We have a new mystery to solve," she typed, her fingers trembling slightly with anticipation. Within minutes, replies came flooding in. "Sounds intriguing," Matt responded. "I'm in." "This could be fun. Count me in," Sarah added. Jason, always the skeptic but never one to back down from a challenge, replied, "All right, let's do it. When do we leave?" By the next day, the group had made their plans. They would spend the weekend at Blackwood Academy, hoping to uncover the truth behind the hauntings. Each of them packed their gear carefully: flashlights, cameras, EVP recorders, and a few basic supplies. They met early Saturday morning, piling into Jason's SUV for the drive to Blackwood Forest. The journey was uneventful, but filled with a growing sense of unease. They chatted nervously, discussing past adventures and speculating about what they might find. As they got closer to the forest, the trees grew denser, their branches intertwining to form a dark canopy overhead. The narrow road seemed to wind endlessly, the signal on their phones fading until they were completely cut off from the outside world. "We're almost there," Olivia said, her eyes glued to the map. "Just a few more turns." Finally, they reached the edge of the forest. A crude, weathered sign reading Blackwood Forest marked the entrance. They parked the car and gathered their gear, the thick silence of the forest enveloping them. The path ahead was overgrown and barely visible, but the map guided them deeper into the woods. After what felt like hours of trudging through underbrush and navigating the twisted paths, they emerged into a clearing. There, standing eerily silent and foreboding, was Blackwood Academy. The school was a grand, Gothic structure, its windows boarded up and its facade overgrown with ivy. The once majestic building now looked like a decaying relic from a forgotten past. The air was thick with the scent of decay and moss, and the only sound was the distant call of crows. The setting sun cast long shadows, giving the place an even more menacing aura. "This place is seriously creepy," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yeah, but it's perfect," Matt said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Jason, ever the pragmatist, checked his watch. "Let's set up camp and start the investigation in the morning. We need to be well rested for whatever we might encounter." They set up their tents near the school's entrance, the oppressive silence weighing heavily on them. That night, around the campfire, they shared ghost stories, their laughter masking the underlying apprehension that each of them felt. As the fire crackled and the night grew darker, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. In the early hours of the morning, Olivia awoke to a faint whispering. She sat up, her breath visible in the cold night air, and looked around. At the edge of the forest, she saw a faint glowing figure, a child, pale and translucent, standing silently. Her heart pounded in her chest as she nudged Jason awake. "Look," she whispered urgently. Jason rubbed his eyes and looked where Olivia was pointing, but the apparition had vanished. He frowned, skepticism giving way to concern. "Probably just a trick of the light," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. As Olivia lay back down, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. The night seemed to close in around them, and she wondered what secrets Blackwood Academy held. She knew one thing for certain: this would be a weekend they would never forget. The journey to Blackwood Forest took longer than anticipated. Jason's SUV rumbled over the increasingly rough road, the trees on either side growing denser and more oppressive. The forest seemed to swallow the light, casting long shadows that danced and flickered. The sky was overcast, adding to the sense of foreboding. In the car, the mood was a mix of excitement and apprehension. Olivia sat in the front passenger seat, her eyes fixed on the old map spread across her lap. Matt and Sarah, seated in the back, chatted about their expectations and fears. "I heard the place was shut down because of some really creepy incidents," Matt said, scrolling through his phone to find more information about Blackwood Academy. "Yeah, the stories are all over the internet," Sarah added, peering over his shoulder. "Disappearances, strange sightings, and some even say the headmaster was into some dark stuff." Jason, focused on the road, chimed in. "Let's hope we don't end up as another ghost story." Olivia glanced up from the map. "We'll be fine. Just stick together and remember why we're here, to find out the truth." After what felt like hours of driving, the GPS signal faded entirely, leaving them reliant on the old map. The road narrowed, barely more than a dirt path now, and the underbrush grew thicker. The SUV bounced over roots and rocks, making the journey increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, they reached a small clearing at the forest's edge. A weathered sign reading "Blackwood Forest" greeted them, its paint chipped and faded. They parked the car and stepped out, the crunch of leaves underfoot breaking the eerie silence. Ahead of them, the forest loomed, dark and impenetrable. The only sound was the distant cawing of crows, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. The map indicated that they had to hike for another mile to reach the school. "Let's gear up," Jason said, pulling a large backpack from the trunk. They each took their own packs, filled with flashlights, cameras, EVP recorders, and basic supplies. The weight of the equipment added to the gravity of their mission. The hike was arduous. The path was overgrown, forcing them to push through thick underbrush and duck under low-hanging branches. The forest was alive with the rustling of unseen creatures, the snapping of twigs underfoot, and the occasional distant howl of an animal. As they walked, the group fell into an uneasy silence. Each step seemed to draw them deeper into a world untouched by time, where the rules of the modern world no longer applied. The air grew cooler, and an eerie mist began to seep through the trees, clinging to their clothes and hair. After what seemed like an eternity, they emerged into another clearing. There, standing before them in silent grandeur, was Blackwood Academy. The building was massive, its Gothic architecture a stark contrast to the wild, untamed forest around it. Ivy crawled up the stone walls and the windows were boarded up, giving the impression of a long-abandoned fortress. The school's facade was a mix of decay and former elegance. Gargoyles perched on the corners of the roof, their stone faces twisted in eternal grimaces. The main entrance was a pair of heavy wooden doors, weathered and cracked, but still standing strong. "Wow," Matt breathed, taking in the sight. "It's even more ominous than I imagined." Sarah shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. "I can almost feel the history here. It's like the place is alive." Olivia nodded, her excitement tempered by a growing sense of dread. "Let's set up camp and take a look around before it gets dark. We need to get a feel for the place." They chose a spot near the entrance, setting up their tents in a semicircle. The air was thick with the scent of moss and decay, and the oppressive silence seemed to amplify every sound they made. As they worked, the sun began to set, casting long, creeping shadows across the clearing. That evening, they gathered around a small campfire, its flickering light providing a semblance of comfort. They cooked a simple meal and shared stories to lighten the mood, but the weight of the looming school was ever present. The conversation eventually turned to the task ahead. "So, what's the plan for tomorrow?" Jason asked, poking at the fire with a stick. "We split into pairs," Olivia said. "Matt and Sarah can take the basement, and Jason and I will explore the upper floors. We stick to the map and try to document everything we see." "And if we encounter anything unusual?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We stay calm and stick together," Matt said firmly. "Remember, we're here to find the truth, not to freak out." As the fire died down, they retreated to their tents, each lost in their own thoughts. The forest seemed to close in around them, the night alive with unseen eyes and whispered secrets. In the early hours of the morning, Olivia awoke to a faint whispering. She sat up, her breath visible in the cold night air. Peering out of her tent, she saw a faint glowing figure at the edge of the clearing. It was a child, pale and translucent, standing silently among the trees. Heart pounding, she nudged Jason awake. "Look," she whispered urgently, pointing toward the figure. Jason rubbed his eyes and looked, but the apparition had vanished. He frowned, his skepticism giving way to concern. "Probably just a trick of the light," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. As Olivia lay back down, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. The night seemed to close in around them, and she wondered what secrets Blackwood Academy held. She knew one thing for certain. This would be a weekend they would never forget. As the first light of dawn filtered through the dense canopy of Blackwood Forest, the group began to stir. The night had been restless, filled with strange noises and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Despite the unease, they were eager to begin their investigation. After a quick breakfast of granola bars and instant coffee, they gathered their gear and approached the looming facade of Blackwood Academy. The grand Gothic structure seemed even more imposing in the light of day, its decayed grandeur a stark reminder of its tragic past. Olivia, the unofficial leader of the group, took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy wooden doors. They creaked loudly, echoing through the empty halls. The air inside was musty and cold, carrying the scent of mold and forgotten memories. "All right, let's stick to the plan," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. "Matt and Sarah, you take the basement. Jason and I will start with the classrooms on the first floor." They nodded, splitting into their designated pairs. Matt and Sarah descended the worn stone steps to the basement, while Olivia and Jason ventured down the main corridor, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The classrooms were a sad sight. Desks lay overturned, papers scattered across the floor, and chalkboards covered in faded lessons. The remnants of a once vibrant educational institution now stood as a haunting testament to its abandonment. As they entered one of the larger classrooms, a sudden chill swept over them. Olivia's breath hitched, and she rubbed her arms against the cold. "Do you feel that?" she asked Jason. He nodded, adjusting the settings on his EVP recorder. "Let's see if we can pick up anything." He placed the device on a desk and pressed record, the red light blinking in the dim light. They stood in silence, listening intently. At first, there was nothing but the sound of their own breathing. Then faintly, they heard it. The distant sound of children laughing. It was soft, almost ethereal, as if carried on a breeze from another time. "Did you hear that?" Olivia whispered, her eyes wide. "Yeah," Jason replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's picking up on the recorder." The laughter grew louder, more distinct. Olivia's flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows across the room. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, and they saw it, a shadowy figure standing in the corner, just out of reach of their light. "Who's there?" Olivia called out, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, but seemed to glide closer, its form becoming more defined. It was a child, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, its eyes hollow and dark. Olivia and Jason stood frozen, their breaths coming in shallow gasps. Just as the apparition reached out a hand, the door to the classroom slammed shut with a deafening bang. The figure vanished, and the temperature returned to normal. Olivia and Jason rushed to the door, their hearts pounding in their chests. "What the hell was that?" Jason exclaimed, his hands shaking as he tried to open the door. It was jammed, refusing to budge. Olivia's mind raced, trying to make sense of what they'd just witnessed. "I don't know, but we need to find Matt and Sarah, now." They forced the door open with a grunt and dashed down the hallway, calling out for their friends. The school seemed to come alive around them, the air thick with an unseen presence. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with Matt and Sarah, who were running up from the basement. "Guys, we need to get out of here," Matt said, his face pale. "We found something bad." "Slow down," Olivia said, trying to catch her breath. "What did you find?" "In the basement," Sarah began, her voice shaking. "There's a hidden room. It was locked, but we managed to get it open. We found a journal, .. it belonged to the headmaster." Jason frowned. A journal? Matt nodded, holding up the dusty leather-bound book. It details some kind of rituals, dark rituals. They were using the students as conduits for spirits. Horrible experiments. We need to leave, now. Olivia's stomach churned. The pieces were starting to come together, but they needed more information. Let's get outside and look through the journal. We need to understand what we're dealing with. They made their way back to the entrance, the oppressive atmosphere following them like a shadow. As they stepped into the relative safety of the clearing, they could finally breathe again. Gathered around the campfire, Matt opened the journal to the first page. The handwriting was elegant but spidery, the ink faded with age. It's dated over 100 years ago, he said. The headmaster was obsessed with the occult. He believed he could harness the power of spirits to achieve immortality. Sarah shuddered. He used the children in his experiments. They were conduits for the spirits he summoned. But something went wrong. The spirits didn't leave. They became trapped here, bound to the school. Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. That explains the ghostly children we've seen. They're the spirits of the students. Jason looked around, his expression grim. If they're trapped, we need to find a way to release them. Put them to rest. Matt flipped through the pages, stopping at a detailed diagram of a ritual. There's a counter-ritual here. It might be our only chance to set them free, but it's complicated, and it needs to be performed at the heart of where the original rituals took place. The attic, Olivia said, recalling the layout of the school. We need to get to the attic. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest, they knew the real challenge was just beginning. They had come seeking answers and adventure, but now they faced a far more dangerous quest, to free the tormented souls of Blackwood Academy. As the first rays of dawn pierced the dense canopy of Blackwood Forest, the group was already awake, preparing for the day's daunting task. The previous night's encounter had left them shaken, but resolute. They had come to uncover the truth, and now they had a mission, to free the spirits trapped within Blackwood Academy. Olivia took charge, reviewing the journal once more. The headmaster's rituals were conducted in the attic. That's where we'll need to perform the counter-ritual. Jason checked their gear, ensuring the EVP recorders, cameras, and flashlights were ready. We need to be careful. We have no idea what we might encounter up there. Matt and Sarah exchanged a nervous glance. The basement had revealed dark secrets, but the attic, the heart of the rituals, promised even greater dangers. They steeled themselves and approached the school, its Gothic facade looming ominously in the early morning light. The heavy wooden doors creaked open, the sound echoing through the empty halls like a mournful sigh. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay and mold, a stark contrast to the crisp, fresh air outside. The main corridor stretched out before them, dark and foreboding. They moved cautiously, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Dust motes danced in the beams of light, and their footsteps echoed eerily, amplifying the sense of isolation. "We'll split up again," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "Matt and Sarah, check the classrooms and make sure there's nothing we've missed. Jason and I will head straight to the attic." With a nod, the group split up. Matt and Sarah moved towards the classrooms, their footsteps receding into the distance. Olivia and Jason turned toward the staircase leading to the upper floors. The stairs creaked under their weight, each step a loud protest in the otherwise silent building. The walls were lined with faded photographs and portraits of stern-looking teachers and smiling children, their eyes seeming to follow the intruders. As they reached the second floor, the temperature dropped noticeably. Olivia shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. "Do you feel that?" she asked. Jason nodded, glancing around warily. "It's like the air's alive. Let's keep moving." They found the staircase to the attic at the end of a long, narrow hallway. The door at the top was marked with strange symbols, similar to those Matt and Sarah had found in the basement. Olivia took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The attic was vast and dark, filled with old furniture, trunks, and cobwebs. The air was even colder here, and the sense of an unseen presence was almost palpable. In the center of the room was a large pentagram-shaped altar, surrounded by faded chalk symbols and melted candle stubs. This was clearly the epicenter of the headmaster's dark rituals. Jason set up the EVP recorder and a camera on a tripod, focusing on the altar. "This is it. Let's get started." Olivia referred to the journal, reading the instructions for the counter-ritual. "We need to draw the symbols in fresh chalk and place the candles at the cardinal points. Then we recite the incantation." They worked quickly, their movements hurried by the sense of impending danger. As they drew the symbols and placed the candles, the air grew colder still, and a low whispering began to fill the room. When everything was in place, Olivia took a deep breath and began to recite the incantation. The words were strange and guttural, the language ancient and powerful. As she spoke, the whispering grew louder, and the shadows in the room seemed to come alive, writhing and shifting like living things. Suddenly, the door to the attic slammed shut, and the temperature plummeted. The whispering turned into wails, the anguished cries of countless children filling the air. The candles flickered wildly, their flames bending and twisting as if caught in a fierce wind. Jason's eyes widened in fear as a figure materialized before them. A tall, menacing man in a dark robe, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The headmaster's spirit had returned, drawn by their actions. "You dare to undo my work," the spirit hissed, its voice echoing with a supernatural timbre. "You cannot stop what has been set in motion." Olivia's hands trembled, but she continued the incantation, her voice growing louder and more determined. The headmaster's spirit moved closer, its form shifting and flickering like a shadow in the wind. Jason grabbed Olivia's arm. "We need to finish this, now." With renewed determination, Olivia spoke the final words of the incantation. The symbols on the floor began to glow, and a blinding light filled the attic. The headmaster's spirit let out a deafening scream, its form disintegrating into a cloud of darkness that was quickly absorbed by the light. The wailing of the children grew louder, then abruptly stopped. The light faded, and the room returned to its previous gloom. The oppressive presence lifted, replaced by a profound silence. "It's over," Olivia said, her voice barely a whisper. "We did it." Jason nodded, his face pale but relieved. "Let's get out of here and find Matt and Sarah." As they descended the stairs, the sense of relief was overwhelming. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. But as they reached the main floor, they found Matt and Sarah waiting for them, their faces etched with worry. "Are you guys okay?" Matt asked, his eyes wide. "We're fine," Olivia said, smiling weakly. "We did it. The spirits are free." Sarah hugged Olivia tightly. "Thank God. We were so worried." They gathered their gear and left the school, the morning light breaking through the trees as they stepped into the clearing. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and the forest felt peaceful for the first time. As they packed up their campsite, Olivia glanced back at Blackwood Academy. The school stood silent and empty, but she knew the spirits were finally at peace. They had come seeking answers and adventure, and they had found both, along with a deeper understanding of the unknown. Together, they walked back through the forest, the sense of accomplishment warming them against the chill. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, their bond forged in the fires of the supernatural. And as they drove away from Blackwood Forest, they knew they would never forget the weekend they spent uncovering the secrets of Blackwood Academy. After the unsettling encounter in the attic, the group retreated from Blackwood Academy, seeking solace in the safety of their campsite. The morning sun brought a semblance of normalcy, but the events of the previous night lingered in their minds. As they sat around the campfire, sipping on lukewarm coffee and nibbling on granola bars, Matt spoke up. "We need to figure out our next move. We can't just leave things unfinished." Sarah nodded in agreement, her eyes flicking nervously towards the looming silhouette of the school. "We need to find out more about what happened here. Maybe there's something in the basement that can help us understand." Jason, ever the pragmatist, raised an eyebrow. "You want to go back in there, after what we just experienced?" "We have to," Olivia said, her voice firm. "We can't ignore what's going on. We need to find out the truth." With a collective sigh, they gathered their courage and made their way back to Blackwood Academy. The school loomed before them, its facade unchanged, but the air seemed charged with a new energy, a sense of urgency that pushed them forward. Descending into the basement once more, they navigated the labyrinthine corridors with growing trepidation. The air was heavy and oppressive, and the faint echo of their footsteps seemed to reverberate endlessly. As they explored, Matt and Sarah stumbled upon a door hidden behind a pile of debris. The door was old and rusted, its surface marked with strange symbols. With a combination of curiosity and dread, they pushed it open and peered inside. What they found sent a shiver down their spines. The room was small and windowless, its walls lined with shelves filled with dusty books and strange artifacts. In the center of the room stood a makeshift altar, adorned with candles and a weathered tome, the journal they had discovered the night before. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she picked up the journal, flipping through its pages with trembling hands. This is the headmaster's journal. It's filled with details about the rituals he performed. Matt's eyes widened as he scanned the pages. He was experimenting on the students, using them as conduits for spirits. It's all here, every twisted detail. Their discovery sent a chill through the group, confirming their worst fears. But amidst the darkness, there was a glimmer of hope. If they could understand the rituals, perhaps they could find a way to undo them. "We need to take this with us," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "We'll study it back at the campsite and figure out our next move." With the journal in hand, they made their way back to the surface, the weight of their discovery heavy on their shoulders. But as they emerged into the sunlight, a sense of determination washed over them. They had uncovered the truth, and now they were determined to set things right. As they returned to their campsite, they gathered around the fire once more, the journal spread out before them. With each page they turned, they delved deeper into the darkness that had consumed Blackwood Academy, piecing together the fragments of a twisted puzzle. But amidst the horror, there was a glimmer of hope, a plan forming in their minds, a way to confront the darkness and emerge victorious. With renewed determination, they vowed to return to the school and put an end to the evil that lurked within its walls. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest, they huddled together around the campfire, the flickering flames a beacon of light in the gathering darkness. They knew the road ahead would be perilous, but they were ready to face whatever horrors awaited them in the depths of Blackwood Academy's basement. With newfound resolve, the group delved deeper into the mysteries hidden within the pages of the headmaster's journal. Each entry revealed another layer of darkness, detailing the depraved experiments and sinister rituals that had taken place within the walls of Blackwood Academy. As they pored over the journal, their determination only grew. They were no longer mere adventurers seeking thrills. They were warriors fighting against the forces of evil that threatened to consume them. Olivia took charge, her mind sharp and focused. According to the journal, the key to undoing the headmaster's rituals lies in a series of artifacts scattered throughout the school. We need to find them and use them to perform the counter-ritual. Jason nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. But we have to be careful. The school is filled with dangers we can't even begin to imagine. Matt and Sarah exchanged a nervous glance, but they nodded in agreement. They were in too deep to turn back now. With a plan in place, they set out once more for Blackwood Academy. The school loomed before them, silent and forbidding, but they were undeterred. They had faced the darkness before, and they would face it again. Their first stop was the library, a sprawling chamber filled with row after row of dusty tomes and decaying manuscripts. According to the journal, one of the artifacts they sought was hidden within its walls. As they searched, they stumbled upon a hidden alcove tucked away behind a bookcase. Inside, they found a small chest, its surface etched with strange symbols. With trembling hands, Olivia opened it, revealing a collection of ancient artifacts: a silver dagger, a tarnished amulet, and a vial of shimmering liquid. "These must be the artifacts," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we still need to find the others." Their search took them deeper into the bowels of the school, through forgotten corridors and crumbling classrooms. With each step, the air grew heavier, and the sense of unease that hung over them like a shroud. Finally, they reached the basement, the heart of the darkness that had consumed Blackwood Academy. Here, Amidst the decay and ruin, they found the remaining artifacts hidden within the shadows. With the artifacts in hand, they returned to the attic, the site of the headmaster's twisted rituals. There, they prepared to perform the counter-ritual, using the artifacts to harness the power of the spirits and set them free. As they spoke the words of the incantation, a sense of weightlessness washed over them. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows danced and flickered like living things. For a moment, they feared they had unleashed something beyond their control. But then, as quickly as it had begun, the darkness receded. The attic was bathed in a soft golden light, and a feeling of peace washed over them. "It's done," Olivia said, her voice filled with relief. "We did it!" As they emerged from the attic, they found the school transformed. The oppressive atmosphere that had hung over it like a pall was gone, replaced by a sense of serenity. The spirits that had once haunted its halls were finally at rest, their torment ended. As they made their way back to the campsite, they knew their journey was far from over. There would always be new mysteries to unravel, new adventures to undertake. But for now, they could rest easy, knowing that they had triumphed over the darkness that had threatened to consume them. Together they sat around the campfire, watching as the stars danced overhead. The forest was alive with the sounds of the night, but there was no longer any fear in their hearts. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, stronger and braver than they had ever been before. And as they drifted off to sleep beneath the watchful gaze of the moon, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As the group settled into an uneasy sleep, the night air was thick with anticipation. Dreams were filled with echoes of the past, visions of restless spirits, and the looming presence of Blackwood Academy. But amidst the turmoil, a sense of determination burned bright within each of them. In the early hours of the morning, they awoke to the sound of rustling leaves and snapping twigs. The forest seemed alive with a new energy, as if the very earth itself was aware of their presence. Olivia rose first, her senses on high alert. She peered into the darkness, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. But the forest remained still, the only sound the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. "Did you hear that?" Matt whispered, his voice barely audible over the rustling of the trees. Olivia nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "We're not alone. Something's out there." With a sense of foreboding, they ventured out into the forest, their flashlights cutting through the darkness like beacons in the night. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of underbrush. As they pressed deeper into the forest, the sense of unease grew stronger. Shadows danced and flickered around them, and the trees seemed to close in, as if conspiring to trap them within their embrace. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a clearing, a small circular space bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. In the center of the clearing stood a figure, a tall, shadowy figure with glowing eyes and outstretched arms. "It's him," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with fear. "The headmaster." The figure stepped forward, its form shifting and flickering like smoke in the wind. "You thought you could defeat me?" it hissed, its voice echoing with a supernatural timbre. "You may have stopped my rituals, but you cannot destroy me." Olivia stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "We're not afraid of you. We know what you did, and we won't let you harm anyone else." The headmaster's laughter echoed through the clearing, sending shivers down their spines. "You foolish mortals! You have no idea what you're dealing with. I am eternal. I cannot be destroyed." But Olivia stood her ground, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "We may not have your power, but we have something you don't. A bond forged in friendship and courage. And with that bond, we will banish you from this place forever." With a defiant cry, they raised their hands and spoke the words of the incantation, the same words that had freed the spirits trapped within Blackwood Academy. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows seemed to recoil from their touch. The headmaster let out a deafening scream, his form writhing and contorting as if caught in a fierce wind. And then, with a blinding flash of light, he was gone, banished from the forest forever. As the light faded, The clearing was bathed in silence once more. The oppressive atmosphere that had hung over them like a shroud was lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and serenity. Together, they made their way back to the campsite, their hearts light with relief. The darkness that had once threatened to consume them had been vanquished, and they were free to continue their journey without fear. As they settled around the campfire once more, they knew that their adventure was far from over. There would always be new challenges to face, new mysteries to unravel. But with their bond forged in the fires of adversity, they were ready to face whatever lay ahead, together. And as they drifted off to sleep beneath the watchful gaze of the stars, they knew that they were stronger and braver than they had ever been before. The morning sun rose over Blackwood Forest, casting golden rays through the canopy of trees. As the group stirred from their slumber, they felt a sense of peace and closure settling over them. The darkness that had once haunted the forest had been vanquished, and they were free to leave Blackwood Academy behind. With a newfound sense of purpose, they packed up their campsite, their movements light and swift. The air was filled with the sounds of birdsong and rustling leaves, a stark contrast to the eerie silence that had hung over the forest just days before. As they made their way back to the trailhead, the forest seemed to welcome them with open arms. The trees whispered secrets of ages past, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. "It's hard to believe we're leaving already," Sarah said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "It feels like we just got here." Matt nodded, a wistful smile playing on his lips. "But we accomplished what we set out to do. We freed the spirits and put an end to the darkness that had plagued this place for so long." Olivia glanced back at Blackwood Academy, a sense of satisfaction warming her heart. "We may have faced horrors beyond imagination, but we emerged stronger and braver than we ever thought possible, and we did it together." With a final glance at the towering trees and winding trails of Blackwood Forest, they turned and began the journey back to civilization. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but they knew that as long as they had each other, they could face whatever challenges awaited them. As they disappeared into the forest, leaving behind the ghosts of their past, they knew that Blackwood Academy would always hold a special place in their hearts, a reminder of the trials they had faced and the bonds they had forged in the face of adversity. And as they drove away from the forest, the sun shining bright overhead, they knew that no matter where life took them, they would always carry the lessons they had learned in Blackwood Forest, lessons of courage, friendship, and the enduring power of the human spirit. As they drove away from Blackwood Forest, the tension that had gripped them for days began to ebb away. In its place was a sense of relief, mingled with a profound sense of introspection. Each member of the group was lost in their own thoughts, reflecting on the events that had unfolded and the lessons they had learned. Olivia stared out of the window, her mind filled with memories of their adventure. She thought about the challenges they had faced, the fears they had conquered, and the bonds they had forged along the way. Despite the darkness that had threatened to consume them, they had emerged stronger and braver than ever before. Jason glanced at Olivia, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He thought about the moments they had shared, the late-night conversations around the campfire, the heart-pounding encounters with the supernatural, and the quiet moments of camaraderie that had bound them together. He knew that their friendship was stronger than any force of darkness. Matt and Sarah sat in the back seat, their hands intertwined as they watched the landscape pass by. They thought about the sacrifices they had made, the risks they had taken, and the love that had sustained them through it all. They knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, hand in hand. As they drove further from Blackwood Forest, the memories began to fade, replaced by the promise of a new beginning. They knew that their adventure had changed them, shaping them into the people they were meant to be. And as they looked towards the horizon, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it with courage, strength, and unwavering friendship. Months had passed since their fateful adventure in Blackwood Forest, but the memories lingered like ghosts in the corners of their minds. Life had returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after facing the supernatural horrors of Blackwood Academy. Olivia, Jason, Matt, and Sarah had gone their separate ways, each carrying the lessons they had learned into their own lives. But despite the distance, their bond remained unbreakable, a testament to the trials they had faced together. Olivia had returned to her studies, her experiences in Blackwood Forest fueling her passion for the unknown. She delved deeper into the mysteries of the supernatural, determined to uncover the truth behind the veil of darkness. Jason had found solace in the quiet solitude of the mountains, where he could ponder the mysteries of the universe beneath the star-filled sky. His encounters in Blackwood Forest had awakened a thirst for knowledge, a thirst that could never be quenched. Matt and Sarah had embarked on a new adventure together, their love stronger than ever in the wake of their ordeal. They traveled the world, seeking out new experiences and facing each challenge with unwavering courage and determination. But no matter where life took them, they would always carry the memories of Blackwood Academy with them, a reminder of the darkness that lurked in the shadows and the light that shone through in the face of adversity. As they looked towards the future, they knew that whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together. For in the end, it was not the darkness that defined them, but the strength, courage, and unwavering friendship that had carried them through the darkest of nights. And as they walked into the unknown, they did so with hearts full of hope and spirits unbroken, ready to face whatever lay ahead.